Hey everybody, and welcome to Views on Vue. Today on our panel, we have Natalia Telpuhina.
Hey.
She's on the Vue Docs team and also CTO of Vue Vixens. And also Ben Hong.
Hey everybody.
He's Vue developer at GitLab and also speaker, MC extraordinaire. I believe he also does children's birthday parties.
Only upon special request.
For very precocious Vue users. And then today our guest is Piero Borrelli.
Exactly.
Hey folks, I just want to let you know quickly about Netlify. Netlify is a really cool system for hosting what are traditionally known as static sites. However, the real benefit that I've been finding is that I don't have to mess with a back end. I can just set things up. I build the website out. I've been using a system called 11DJS, and you just deploy it. And then anything that you have that you want to do, you can do on the front end. So if you want to pull in some kind of database with Firebase or something else, if you want to collect form data, Netlify provides all kinds of services that make it easy to do all that stuff. If you're trying to do serverless, they have a really, really neat serverless setup that will allow you to deploy your websites without having to deploy a backend, and it'll do some of the work for you. I just love it. So if you're looking for a way that you can actually deploy a website that only has front-end technology in it, gives you all the tools that you typically need for the back end without having to actually program the back end, then give them a try. Go check them out at netlify.com.
This is going to be a little bit of a special episode. So, Piero, you are not currently using Vue right now, right?
Exactly. I'm not currently using Vue. So this kind of makes me like a special interviewer. From a guest, I became an interviewer, like suddenly.
Yeah. So you have experience with quite a few different frameworks that you've used, right?
Yeah. Actually, in the last 2 years, I have had the possibility to experience many different technologies. I've been working like the first year as a consultant. So I was like having a lot of job interviews and really working with many different teams, companies to accomplish a result using different technologies, old and new ones.
Can you name some of these technologies that you've worked with?
Yeah, actually, I work with Java. I work with like AGB, MyBetis. I work with NodeJS, MongoDB, JavaScript, and of course like HTML, CSS. We've also worked just a little bit with Spring. So, my work was kind of, if I can say that, polymorphic. I just had to go to a company and just get used to the technology. But now I had the occasion to switch to being a full stack Node.js developer, which is what I always wanted to do. This also gave me the occasion to understand what I like and what I don't like to do.
Great. So you're writing back-end code and front-end code.
Yeah, exactly.
And on the front end, what are you using most of the time these days? Most
of the time, I'm using Angular. We're using HTML, CSS, and of course, Angular, and just working with those with that stack.
So does that mean you're also using TypeScript?
Exactly. Actually, this is quite a particular situation because the application I'm working on is separated into two parts. One part is made with Angular 1.6.5, and the other one is made with a newer version of Angular. The reason behind this is because when the project started, we had to use like Angular 1.6.5, and then later we decided to move some parts of the application that came later to a new stack. So now we are trying to convert all the application and to migrate it to the, let's say, state of the art of the Angular framework.
Oh, it sounds really challenging.
It's really challenging also because, as I mentioned earlier, we are just 3 people. So we're always running. We always try to deploy. We always try to build new stuff. So, sometimes you just got to stop and try to organize the work in order to migrate the application correctly.
Wow. So you have all this experience with these other frameworks and solving sounds like a wide variety of challenging problems. But you don't have that much experience in Vue, but you've been sort of keeping an eye on it. And this is an opportunity now for you to hear from some people in the Vue community who are like all building applications with Vue.
Exactly.
Like, how would Vue work for your problems, your use cases? Like, where are the weaknesses? What are things you should look out for? That kind of thing. So Go ahead. This is going to be exciting. Go ahead and take the wheel, and whatever questions you have, please just ask us.
Thank you so much. This is the moment I become the interviewer. Like, this wasn't expected, but it's really good for me because let's say I can learn from the masters and I can learn from people who have already been using the framework. So,
and I'm sure we'll learn from you as well.
Yeah, I think everybody can learn from this and exchange their ideas. So if I could start with a question, recently I have written an article on my blog and I have asked developers, let's say from all over the world, about how they started and how they ended up working on a specific technology. So my first question will be, how did you end up working with Vue? Were you interested in it? Or like, was there like just a necessity for your project? Did it have any peculiarities or specifics that you were attracted to that made you say like, oh my God, I want to learn Vue?
I love that question. Natalia, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I will. So when I was a front-end developer, my first framework was very similar to your experience. It was Angular 1.4. It were like no components, nothing special, and it still was very fun comparing to jQuery times. And I was tracking the new release of Angular. I was looking for Angular 2. And Angular 2, as you probably remember, was released in September of 2016. And the fun fact is Viewpoint 2 was released like 2 weeks later. Yeah, Chris? I think 2 weeks later after Angular. And I decided to try it, and I was impressed. Because Angular 2 was very different compared to Angular 1.4 and 5. It was like completely different framework, but naming was so confusing. It's like you expected something similar to what you're working with, and you get completely different framework.
It's like, why is it even called the same name?
I know, right? Even now, if you try to search for some issue with Angular, the search results are divided for Angular 1 and Angular 2, and it's very confusing. In the meantime, Vue was similar to the first Angular. It was mostly in terms of syntax, because we have directives.
Yes.
And they're really similar. Yeah. But it was way simpler, and it was easier to get than Angular 2, because we didn't require TypeScript. And I really liked working with Vue. I had no really requirement to work it with my job because we were doing Angular. But somehow I convinced my manager to try it, and he liked it as well. So it was my beginning, and it was like an instant love. Yeah. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, so funny story. Unlike the rest of you, I did not really have a framework of choice when I first started. So when I was learning front-end development, as a kid, I thought I needed to learn Java to learn JavaScript. And that misconception plagued me for like the next 15 years. So by the time I jumped back into JavaScript, the framework war was basically happening. And I tried my best to do Angular. React was big at the time. And so it wasn't until I joined Politico, actually, that we were starting to have the opportunity to look into frameworks. And React was certainly the hot thing at the time. And so funny enough, I originally was pushing for React as our framework of choice. And it was actually some coworkers of mine, Christian Guerreri and Hung Soo, who sort of mentioned like, hey, there's this Vue framework that you should check out. And so over time, I basically ended up having the opportunity to prototype with it and to push it to production. And the big thing for us, I think that made us choose Vue was that we had developers and designers who weren't necessarily familiar with JavaScript, but still wanted to contribute. And Vue has such a great baseline for allowing people who might not be expert JavaScript people to join in and help out. So, I like to call it the compassionate framework.
I like the definition, a compassionate framework. It's like the first time I hear it.
Yeah, I think the reason I particularly say that is because it really lets you opt in to what's best for you. So obviously, I know TypeScript is growing within the front-end community, but it's not necessarily like not every team is ready for that. And so Vue, I think, does a good job of allows you to progressively enhance what you have, as an application stack as you keep growing. So that's one of the reasons why I liked it a lot.
Perfect. And what about you, Chris?
So for me, I had used jQuery for a while, Backbone, Angular 1. Also, I used a tiny bit of Ember. And then I was using React for several years. And I was actually a React consultant for a couple of years before I had even tried out Vue. And then I tried out Vue one day. I think it was just like a Saturday where I figured, okay, I'll just learn something new. And I was honestly looking for reasons to dismiss it because I don't, like, we all want to keep up to date, right? But I don't really want to switch to a new framework. Because especially for React, like, it took me so long to get productive. And I was at a place where I was feeling pretty good. I knew how to solve most problems. And, I didn't want to go through that process all over again and completely learn from scratch. That sounded horrible to me. But I tried out Vue, and I found that within the first day, like, there were a lot of things that I was really liking. And after a single day, I was already probably about 80% as productive as I was, like, in less than a single day. It was amazing. And then within a week, I was more productive with Vue than with React, having used React for years.
That's crazy.
Which totally blew me away. And of course, at this time, like, no one really knew anything about Vue. This is before Vue was really big. There wasn't even a core team. Like, it was just Evan.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I couldn't tell companies that I worked for, it's like, oh yeah, you should check out Vue, this framework you've never heard of. So I would only use it on my data visualization projects at first, because those were the projects where I could usually pick any technology that I wanted. No one cares. And for the larger applications, I didn't really have a choice. Or for the applications that I'm working with a larger team on, more specifically, I guess.
I am really surprised by how easy it was for you to pick up Vue.
And that was actually before the docs were as good as they are now.
Wow. I don't know if maybe I think like the fact that you were already like a developer and that you already had quite a bit of a time as an experience like under your belt was like a major factor, but picking up a framework in that small amount of time is great.
I'll absolutely agree. Like, the fact that I had already experience with components or like just component-based frameworks, like, that's one of the biggest things that it sometimes takes people to, wrap their minds around, just working with components and figuring out like how to fit components together in an application. But once you know that, the actual implementation details of Vue were often pretty intuitive, even though they were very different in many cases from what I was used to.
I think when learning something new, you first learn like the syntax and how to write code using that specific technology. And then you kind of have to migrate to thinking using that technology. So like, if you develop an application using JavaScript and jQuery, and then you migrate to Angular, you won't only have to learn the Angular syntax, but also how to think like in components and other major parts of the framework.
Yeah.
So my question for you guys will be, if you could come back to the first days where you were learning Vue, what would you change and why? Like, do you have any advice for like a younger you trying to learn Vue, or like for everybody who is listening to us, like, okay, you're trying to pick up this technology. This is what I will tell you to do when learning it.
For me, it was like when you learn Vue, and I was trying to learn it with a course actually. And this course was starting with using Vue without components. It was like a replacement for jQuery. You just pick Vue script from CDN and you can start working with it. You don't need a component actually to work with Vue. But for me now, it was like, I should have skipped this part. I should start with component immediately because it was very intuitive with Vue. Like, no problems. Even so, I didn't work with components in Angular because it was really old Angular. Okay, Ben?
Shoot, I lost my train of thought listening to your story. Chris, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure, I can go. So I'm going to give sort of not the answer that you wanted, and then also another answer that you didn't really want. So I apologize for that in advance. But the first thing is that like there were some things about the documentation that didn't really make sense to me, that confused me a little bit. But I do a lot of work on documentation on the Vue team now with Natalia. And so I changed those things. So if I could go back in time, I would like rewrite those sections so that I could never have experienced it, I guess. But it worked out anyway. And the other thing that is also like not really directed to my experience, but from what I hear from a lot of people in the community is like, I think we're all used to seeing really bad documentation. Right?
Yeah.
We've all experienced this, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so we don't trust that the official documentation is actually going to be a good resource. And when we like Google some problem or how to use some feature, if we're looking at the Google results and we see something on Stack Overflow, I'm often going to trust that over official documentation. So, I'll go there and figure out what people are saying, even though there's no one committed necessarily to keeping that up to date or anything. I just expect the documentation to be so bad. And so a lot of people have that experience with Vue too, where they don't trust the official docs at first. And then they go through a lot of resources, and then later they check out the official docs and realize like, oh, this is actually really high quality, and they put a lot of work into this. I could have actually just like learned the basics from this.
Exactly. I've personally experienced like bad documentation, and I think it's one of the worst things you can ever try as a developer. Really, it might also not be a reason to not start working with a certain technology. If it's like too old, too outdated, and there is no good way to learn it. But as you're telling me, like with Vue now, things have changed, and you're telling me like it's a great documentation. So that's a big plus for the.
I would say it was good documentation before. And then we made it great. And, with the help of the community, finding like little sentences, because this is a huge advantage that I didn't realize before, is that like you can't take something from bad to great. That's impossible. It's just too much of a challenge, at least because I'm not a super talented writer. But if you take something from good to great, then people can see that you've put a lot of effort, and then the community helps you out a lot to find little things that don't make sense because they're used to such high quality. And so they're more nitpicky, and they'll help you iron out the parts that are really bad. So I think through the community, in some cases, we've made it truly spectacular.
Wow.
The other thing I would add to that actually is, as far as advice to my younger self, is that you don't have to learn everything before you start using Vue. I think a lot of developers fall fallacy to that, is that you kind of want to like take all the courses out there before you start like building something. And with Vue, again, if I could tell my younger self that, is not to spend time learning every technique available to you. Like, yes, you need to learn the basics, but then just start building. Like as problems come, like Vue will be there for you with new techniques and stuff. And you'd be surprised with how much you can do with just like the fundamentals. Without any complicated like composition techniques and stuff. And so that was one thing. It would have gotten me started a lot sooner if I had not approached it from like I have to learn everything before I get started kind of thing.
Yeah, you don't even know this. You don't even have to know the CLI or a build system to like build real production applications in Vue.
Exactly.
That's also like a measure point that I try to understand when, thinking about learning something new is how quick will I be able to develop, let's say, something cool. And with something cool, I'm talking about something that will keep the motivation high for like a beginner on that technology. So can I develop this application or this other application? How quick can I do that? And so will I feel rewarded by working with these technologies? Because let's be honest, working with like the command line, it's all right, but developing cool looking projects and real world applications, it's a lot better. And it makes you feel like you're really accomplishing something.
I agree 100%.
100%. And that's also the reason why I decided to switch to a JavaScript stack. I was working with HTML, CSS. I was developing like web pages, and I said like, oh wow, I want to add interactivity to this. And it was just like, I was really having something to check out, something to watch, and it was just cool. So you're really making this intriguing for me, as a framework.
Awesome. But I would be curious to hear, or I guess, Piero, would you be interested in hearing about like some of the first projects that people built were?
Yeah, of course. I would like to hear. What were your first projects?
I think like what features made those projects fun?
That sounds like a really great suggestion. You can also like link eventually to projects that you're building now, so how the things that you built in the past helped you to become like the Vue developer that you are today, and how what they taught you.
I love it. Natalia, do you want to go first again?
Okay. So I think first thing I tried to build with Vue was kind of a mock of pizza store. It was really fun. And you mentioned like how fast you can do this. The thing is, like 3 weeks after I started learning Vue, I decided to apply for a new position. And they had a testing task, a really interesting testing task. It was kind of GitHub Explorer. You need to browse a GitHub, certain repositories, and sort the contributors with their contributions, guests, followers, and stars. It wasn't that easy. And I decided, okay, I'm learning Vue. I'm going to build it with Vue, actually. And as you can understand, it was a challenge because it was a new framework, but I managed to do it. And the most fun part, and it really impressed my reviewers, was transitions. Because with Vue, you can make animation really easily. And so my project had a lot of nice transitions, animations, and all this stuff. And probably it was a point for my reviewers to decide on me. It was really cool. And what about my current project? It's funny because most of my projects are CLI plugins right now. They're not probably very nice to showcase because it's just plugins for CLI, but the biggest project I'm working on now on Vue is actually my job. It's GitLab. So GitLab is used in Vue. And I can say even those projects on browsing GitHub is helping me right now because, in fact, you have a lot of basic cases, even on complicated job like for GitLab. Ben, what about you? Just don't mention GitLab one more time, please.
No, I won't. So my first project with Vue was, unfortunately, it's behind a paywall, but it's for a company called Politico in the United States that does like a news media. And so they had like a software tool that basically allows you to sort between various documents. And so they have like basically a PDF, a bunch of PDFs that they have like all this data they want to filter down. And so it's basically a document search tool. And I built all of that with very basic Vue knowledge that I went into it. I think the V4 directive became my best friend really, really quickly because I was looping through things like all the time. So did you have something to say, Chris?
No, I was just going to make a joke about, you getting a little bit loopy.
Yes, V4 made me quite loopy. But as far as I would basically take the lessons learned from that. And so for those Vue developers on there, I would tell you that I learned about an event bus at the time, and I thought it was a brilliant idea to use that as my global state management. And I was like, great, I'll save on like size of Vuex, and I'll be great. And when I had to refactor that later on, it was one of the worst experiences I've had. So that was a fun lessons learned from that particular project. But yeah, so currently right now I'm working on the Meltano team within GitLab. And so a lot of my work is focused on documentation and sort of like explaining things. So my work actually has a lot to do with VuePress right now. So VuePress is a documentation tool you definitely should worth checking out.
Okay. What about you, Chris?
So my very first project with Vue, just beyond like interacting with the simple demos and maybe making some tiny changes, like just on the website and the documentation, was I had this contract with the National Science Foundation at the time, building these visualizations for like genetic trees of life and all sorts of like other genetics related things. So that was pretty exciting and that was fun. And I was building that in React, and I decided let's try to like rewrite some of this in Vue and see what that experience is like. I thought that would be a good point of comparison. And I wasn't thinking I would use it at all. But I found that it was actually a lot of fun. Like I could build it out really quickly. I could use the same structure that I was using in my Vue applications or my React applications. So I didn't have to like completely reorganize my code base. And I actually could use Vue and React alongside so that it was like a gradual migration.
All right.
Where, at a certain point in the tree, it would turn into Vue. And then, higher up, everything was controlled by React until Vue took over and then everything was Vue. But I never had a point where the application was broken. And that was really exciting. And there were two features that I especially appreciated: the transition and transition group elements. And then I guess also the reactivity system and how well that works with animation libraries like GSAP. And I was also using a lot of the modules from D3 to do some math for visualization. And it made creating like these beautiful transitions so easy. And I actually ended up, because it was so simple this way, adding even more like cool animations to the visualization. So what I had as a final product wasn't just a clone of what I had before, but I had made improvements along the way. Just because making those improvements was so easy, I may as well.
So happy to hear I'm not alone with a love to Vue animations.
Yes, same here.
A lot of my work at that time was data visualization. So that was huge for me. Just like being able to make beautiful things without a lot of work and without a lot of thinking.
Right.
And high performance, that was super important.
So, this is always kind of made me curious because, currently I'm not looking for a job, but sometimes, like I'm wandering around through LinkedIn or other places where we look for in Italy. I'm starting to see Vue coming up more often during these days. If earlier you could just see like Angular, then it became Angular and React, and then it became like Angular, React, and Vue. Since we are all talking from different countries, I guess just like Ben and Chris are from USA, right?
Oh, we both live here now, at least. I didn't grow up here, but we don't need to go into that whole long story.
How will you define, like, how do you see Vue.js and its position in the market right now and in the future? So do you think it's really something that people should be willing to learn because it's like going to be a big thing in the future? If it's already not, like, would you recommend, like, you got to learn Vue now because like more jobs for this technology are popping up, more important projects are getting created?
Well, there's a couple things I want to say real quick. For the last 3 years, I think, at least by some measures, it's been the fastest growing open source software project in the world. Not like JavaScript framework, not JavaScript project, software project in the world. And right now, I think our growth is, like in terms of our user base, is about 10% every month.
That's amazing. That's truly impressive.
So we're growing astronomically fast. So it means that 10 months from now, there'll be twice as many Vue developers. And this trend has been going on for a while. It's been very steady.
Right.
Do you want me to hop in on this one? Okay.
I'm done. So anything.
Okay. Yeah, so from my end, I think the reason why I actually encourage, especially people who are new to frameworks, to learn Vue is because it makes it, again, getting up and running is really fast. And you get that, as you were mentioning, Piero, like that feeling of like, oh, like I'm making something work. I have something I can like show off and have fun with. But then once you grasp those concepts, it then makes it a lot easier if need be, because I know people who are active in the Vue community, but their jobs happen to be Angular, happen to be React, and they'll bring the concepts that they took from there and bring it over to those frameworks, and we're able to pick it up just as easily, right? Because I always try to remind newer developers that like our value as developers is not the ability to memorize how one framework works, but like the concepts and the theories behind why we do those things. And so Vue, I think, does a good job getting people on that basis where like, okay, I understand the concepts. Now I just need to learn some syntax, but I'm good to go.
Right.
Okay, and I will speak about job market because Ukraine is one of the biggest outsourcing centers in Europe. So our job market usually represents the world market really nicely. And I can see a real growth for Vue positions for like last year, like really huge growth. So probably it's more required. I can't say it's the most required framework because this position is still for React. And I think it will be for React for at least 2 years from now, because React is really, really popular. But the good thing is when you learn Vue, it becomes really easier to learn React and Angular after this. Because from big three, Vue has probably the easiest learning curve. And you grasp the reactivity patterns, you grasp components, you grasp state management. Actually, I was trying to learn Redux after Vuex. And it was so much easier when you know Vuex already. And Vuex is a state manager for Vue. So I'd say if you want to learn any framework just to find a job, and that's it, it would probably be React, but it's not very productive. From my experience, it's the best when you're working with something you really, really like. So I would start with Vue anyway.
I think my advice might be a little bit different. I might, like, if people are worried about, I guess if they just want to like have fun and be productive, I'd say definitely give Vue a try and really give it one day, because that's all it takes. Like, give it one day, and if you're not satisfied with it, then forget it and go learn something else. But employers often ask me, like, how do I find Vue developers? Where do I find them? Like, where should I be posting? And how do I attract them? And I usually tell people, you don't need to hire Vue developers. Just hire a JavaScript developer and then give them a day. And then they're a Vue developer. Because really, like the concepts that we talked about earlier, those big higher level concepts like components, and organizing your application in sort of a modular way with views and maybe layouts and things like that. If you already have experience with those kinds of concepts, like those are the hardest things to learn.
Yeah, those are like the higher concepts that you should be learning like later. And this was also like a good point to understand like how Vue can be a good investment for the future. Like you start learning it now. And since the growth rate is so high, it can be like a really good investment for you as a developer in the future. And there was also like a hook to start talking about whether developers value more like their passion for a framework, or if they value more how much they will be able to use that framework in the future. It's like for me, when I started learning Node.js, Angular, I really liked them, but I was lucky to be happy to work with those technologies because it just happened to me. I really like the JavaScript syntax. I really like TypeScript, but I was also looking forward, like in 3, 4, 5 years, how will I be able to use what I'm learning now to grow as a developer and to level up my career, if I can use that verb.
Yeah. And I think I would probably actually say that any of the frameworks will probably teach you the big concepts that are going to help you level up your career and make sure that you can stay relevant. Because we all are using components. We all are using many of the same ideas.
Yeah.
From a high level. And so there's not like a huge jump that you have to make unless you're learning a completely new technology or a completely new mindset. So for example, when learning Angular, it's basically required to learn TypeScript, whereas that's optional with Vue and React. And you basically have to learn RxJS, which can be like a huge, it can be huge to wrap your mind around that, a lot of concepts. Honestly, I've used RxJS quite a lot, and I still don't think I could say that I completely understand everything about it.
I don't believe there is any person who understands RxJS completely.
Maybe Ben Lesh or something like that. Maybe
Maybe not
Some
even
people
him.
writing RxJS.
Well, he denies.
Yeah, actually, that's true. He denies it too.
This episode is sponsored by Sentry.io. Recently, I came across a great tool for tracking and monitoring problems in my apps. Then I asked them if they wanted to sponsor the show and allow me to share my experience with you. Sentry provides a terrific interface for keeping track of what's going on with my app. It also tracks releases so I can tell if what I deployed makes things better or worse. They give you full stack traces and as much information as possible about the situation when the error occurred to help you track down the errors. Plus, one thing I love, you can customize the context provided by Sentry. So, if you're looking for specific information about the request, you can provide it. It automatically scrubs passwords and secure information, and you can customize the scrubbing as well. Finally, it has a user feedback system built in that you can use to get information from your users. Oh, and I also love that they support open source to the point where they actually open sourced Sentry if you want to self-host it. Use the code devchat at Sentry.io to get 2 months free on Sentry's small plan. That's code devchat at Sentry.io.
So my next question, if I can proceed, is because you told me like I'm working with Vue, I'm using this technology, and in your current day job, your current daily work life, what would you say is the best part of using Vue and the worst? And when I'm talking about the best and the worst part, I'm not talking like passion or like emotional attachment to the technology because you like it, but on a strictly technical level, what would you say it's a pain to work with when using Vue? And what would you say, like, I'm very grateful I'm using this technology right now?
Like which problems
Exactly.
you can solve
Arise.
easily and problems arise maybe that it creates.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does anyone want to go first for this one, or?
No, just go ahead. I'm thinking about it.
You're thinking about it? Okay. Then I'll buy you both some time. So I'll start with my favorite one, which is that like Vue, and this is a continuing trend. Like we try to keep the API as simple as we can, and there's more work that we can do and are doing for this in Vue 2.x and also in Vue 3, where we can eliminate the number of things that you have to know about in order to just get your work done. Because I find a big problem for a lot of developers is when you're solving any kind of problem, you already have to keep so much in your head just to make sure you don't like accidentally mess up something else, or to make sure that you're handling a specific edge case, or to make sure that you know about the fact that you'll need this feature if you run into this specific problem while you're running something. So I like how we try to simplify the concepts and only make your application as complex as your needs actually are, rather than making it complex before it has to be. So really, like for simple problems, like when you're starting out a new feature and the feature is very simple, Vue kind of gets out of your way and just does it. And only when that becomes a really complex problem does it offer other tools that you can know about if you want, and that you can use and bring into your project to make it a little bit more complex, but help you overall manage and reduce complexity. Does that part make sense before I go on to what I don't like about it?
For me, it was very clear, yeah.
Okay. So I think something I don't like about it is, let's see, this one is a little bit harder. I work with you all the time, and there are definitely things that I don't like, but I'm trying to think about like a specific problem where something gets in my way. I honestly cannot think of a problem where I've thought, gosh, Vue just isn't really the right tool for this. Or Vue like can't handle this the way that like I've handled it before in like React or Angular or other frameworks. Gosh, I know that's unsatisfying and it makes me sound biased.
Do you want us to buy you some time?
Yeah, sure. If you have some thoughts.
Okay, I will probably share. So one of the best parts, I will be like more specific about Vue features. So one of the best parts in my daily job is the concept of slots, because we have a lot of general components. We need to abstract them as much as possible. And with Vue slots, it's really easy. It does the job perfectly. And we're really happy we have them. What about what I hate? It will be more general. I don't even hate. I don't like the thing is Vue. Vue is allowing you to do things in different ways. And sometimes there is no strict denial on something. Like one of the latest examples I have is Vue is usually emitting events. So you pass data down with props to child components and you emit events from child components. But in fact, you can pass a function as a prop and call it in a child component, and it's not denied, it's totally fine, and it has downsides. You can track it with your DevTools, and we have a lot of developers with React experience, and they do this a lot. And I really hate correcting them, because technically they're right, and there is no strict denial in docs. What do you say? What can you say about this, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, they won't have any new problems that they don't already have in React.
That's true.
But there are some patterns that people. I'm trying to remember what this pattern is called in React. Divya knows, so too bad she's not here. But there's basically a pattern that you have to do that makes it easier to like have listeners on an element. And also allow the parent to like have listeners on that element, but not have to worry about what events they need to listen to.
Oh my God, that sounds like a total chaos.
And that's a super, super, super common use case, actually. Super common. Basically, like anytime you have a form element, you probably need to do that. You probably want to do that. And in React, you have to think about it, and there's some boilerplate. And there are some like really like high-level computer science like concepts that sometimes, blog articles teach you about in order to handle that problem well. And in Vue, it's just a problem you never encounter because our event system just like doesn't conflict with other event listeners. Just like native JavaScript, when you add an event listener to something, you don't have to worry about like, oh, is there already an event listener for that event defined? Or you just do your work. And you only have to think about the things that component cares about. Was that an okay explanation, Natalia?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Cool. As far as my favorite part of Vue, I'll go a little bit even higher level, is the concept of single file components. I know that more frameworks are starting to do things like this, but Vue does, again, just from a scoping your concerns down to a single file, and more importantly, I know this is controversial among some JavaScript developers, but like I love writing CSS and like sort of like getting in the weeds of writing good CSS architecture. And Vue out of the box gives so many different methods for managing your CSS, particularly scope styles and CSS modules. Like the fact that all you have to do is add a module attribute to your style block, and it automatically does all this like, code splitting, and then more importantly, like it replaces CSS class names. Like that to me is one of my favorite things about Vue, that you get out of the box without doing any fancy like CSS and JS and that kind of thing. As far as like a problem, I think this is one that every framework has, which I think is a lead-in for Chris. But I think the single root component is a problem I run into a lot. Sometimes you just want multiple root components in root elements in a component. And so I think Chris can speak a little to that. But yeah, I would say those are my two things.
Yeah, actually, I'll agree with that. I mean, and React has, I wouldn't say this is the same kind of problem for every framework. For example, React has fragments, to allow
that's right.
you to return multiple root nodes.
Mm-hmm.
But in Vue, you can do that, but it has to be a special kind of component that you have to know more things in order to be able to write. It's a functional component using a render function rather than a template, which typically most people are writing templates 95 to 98% of the time, and then render functions when they really need that power, because the templates are like more declarative and simpler to write. But in Vue 3, that restriction will be going away. And we actually, this is part of the trend that I was talking about before. Like, I wouldn't even like to have a concept of fragments, because we already have like an abstraction in JavaScript for a list of things, and it's an array. So you can just return an array of elements if you want. Mm-hmm. And in templates, you just write whatever HTML that you would write, and it can work.
Yeah, I can't wait for that.
Right. Okay. I can proceed with the next question, but if you have any suggestions, that's also appreciated.
No, your questions have been very good so far. I've been enjoying them.
Thank you so much. So if you guys agree, I will proceed with the next question. And this is kind of linked to what I asked you before, but it's more related to your personal opinion on it, not about data or something like that. But now that you're working with Vue and that you're regularly seeing it grow and more people are joining, let's call it the Vue army. How do you see this technology growing in the future? I'm not talking about the market, but how do you think the framework itself will evolve? And maybe what direction the framework is pointing to? Maybe, to tackle some specific problems, to trying to acquire new users, to try to become mainstream. How would you say, I think Vue in 5 years is going to be this? What would your answer to that question be?
Great question. Natalia, do you want to start again?
Oh my God, it's really hard to say how it will be in 5 years because...
Yeah, 5 years is a long time.
Vue is really young.
Well, but also 5 years for a framework, it's a huge amount of time.
It's whole life, yeah. Some frameworks are actually dying before this age, and not that pessimistic, but I think let's not speak about 5 years, but right now, what are we going to conquer? First of all, as a heavy TypeScript user, I can say we're going to win some love from TypeScript users because Vue 3 will support TypeScript nicely. And for me, it's a kind of huge win. Maybe Chris will disagree with this, but I can see it's really nice because I know a lot of people loving TypeScript and using TypeScript, and for them, it's a huge step ahead.
No, I don't disagree at all. And Vue 2 also supports TypeScript, but we want to make the experience with TypeScript in Vue 3 truly best of class.
Yeah, that was exactly what I meant. I know we have TypeScript support, but anyway, it's more complicated now than it will be in Vue 3. Also, I really love we will have proxies and we will solve some reactivity issues, specifically ViewSat. It's really great. Okay, I will think some more about this question and wait for Ben and Chris.
Ben, do you have an answer, or should I buy you some time?
I think this will be as good as it gets for me. For me, having watched the community grow over the last year, the big thing for me is what I hope to see is the continuation in growth of the community as a whole. Everyone in the community has always been really warm and really great to work with. And I think something that Vue introduced to me, I think Chris might be the one who introduced this actually, is the idea of documentation-driven development. I think that's one thing that Vue seems to do a really good balance of, as far as making sure that when building APIs and those sort of things, that these are things that actually make sense to users rather than build them technologically first.
Yeah, only building APIs that are easy to explain.
Yes, right. And so I'm hoping that, given in the future, that mentality will grow and more people will embrace that kind of thinking when building things. So
great. And then I think I would say a few general trends, just like in Vue 3 coming out soon. It's going to be about half the size, twice as fast. The source code is going to become a lot more modular than it is now. So it'll be easier than ever, really as easy as possible to contribute, so that you don't even have to know about the whole framework in order to make a contribution. You can just know about one small part of it and be able to develop and be able to contribute to Vue. That's something I'm really excited about, having even more contributors. We already have a lot. We have, it might be, I know it's at least hundreds, it might be thousands now, which is really exciting. And I'm also excited about generally things getting simpler and more explicit, which they're already quite simple and explicit in Vue 2, but just continuing that trend is something I am really, really excited about. And just making sure that the experience continues to be a compassionate one. as Ben was talking about earlier, where you start out and when you're solving a simple problem, like things seem pretty simple and you don't have to learn a lot. And then when things get a little bit more complicated, okay, I have to learn a little bit, but it helped me like solve this problem and like a whole other class of problems. And the whole time you just feel like really powerful and like there's more power at the tip of your fingertips, but you're not feeling overwhelmed by any of it because you don't have to know everything just to do Hello World. Yeah.
Natalia, have you got some other hooks for us about?
No, I think Chris was like all about it.
Right. So for now, if I, like as a listener, like as a participant to this podcast, but also as a listener to what you are saying to me, had to start learning Vue like this night, because like it's night in Italy. What would your recommendation be for me, like as resources? Just go through the documentation, maybe some Udemy courses, some like special resources online. Where would you start? What would you let a beginner start in that sense?
So we're all educators here. So this is actually a question I hope we can answer.
Yeah, I just taught a workshop too. So
Natalia, do you want to go first?
Yes, so first and the most obvious source is Vue official documentation. And probably I sound biased a bit because now I'm a part of Vue Docs team. So it's like, yay, read docs, please, because I know not everyone is looking at official documentation, but trust me, it's great. It's thanks to Chris and Sarah mostly because they were working on it. But I hope for views.
And Evan and Anfan.
And Fan. Yeah, exactly. So for me, it's
like all of our translators and the entire community. Gosh, so many people help with it. It's been awesome. Yeah. And you, by the way. Don't forget to give yourself credit.
I've just joined, so not thanking me. As for courses, I really like the Front-End Masters course by Sarah Dresner. It's a great introduction to Vue. As I can say the same for Vue School and Vue Mastery introduction courses, and as far as I remember, they are free. So it's a good point to start. As for Udemy, and this one has my special love because I was learning Vue with it, I think. It's a course by Maximilian Schwarzmüller.
Oh, I know him. He's a very good guy.
He's really nice, and he's teaching Vue in his nice manner, so now with a smile. And his explanations are really great. As far as I know, he's also updating his course, and it's really, really nice. So I think it's complete guide to Vue or something like this.
He usually calls them like the complete guide too.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I guess I'll go next. Natalia's recommendations are, funny enough, all on my slides when I teach workshops. So the only thing to listeners out there, if you're new to Udemy, is never pay full price. It'll say $100, $200. There's always a coupon code where it'll be like $10 US. So whatever you do, don't pay full price. But yeah, Vue Mastery.
Way to help him out. He's trying to make a living here. He's producing great content. Now you're saying never pay full price? Oh gosh.
Yeah.
I'd say pay full price if you find it's really worth it. You can pay the $10, and then it's like you think, wow, this is obviously way more value than $10. I can't believe I have this for $10. I'm going to go buy it for full price later. You can do that.
Yeah, and it's just a cheapskate.
Well, I'm just saying, if people want to expense it or whatever, it's easier to ask for a $10 expense than a $200 expense. But anyways, to a fair point, no, Maximilian, funny enough, is also one of the courses that I took as well. And so highly recommend his work with that. And so, I basically second all of Natalia's recommendations. We'll make sure to put those in the show notes for people.
Great. Is that it?
Yep.
Well, thank you both for stealing basically everything that I wanted to say. I do have a couple more resources to add. So for people who really enjoy video content, there's also Vue School and Vue Mastery, which are two.
Them.
Oh, you did? Okay, I missed it then.
Yes, I did.
I missed it then. I was hoping. Okay, well, then here's a little note that people can say, or people can remember. If you used to, and I hope Natalia didn't say this too. I thought I was paying more attention to this. If you used to watch code school courses and you really liked them, with Greg Pollock, Greg Pollock is one of the founders of Code School, and he's also one of the founders, along with Adam Jar, for View Mastery. So you can see that same level of top-notch content on View Mastery.
That is true.
But yeah, both View School and View Mastery really have very high quality courses and a lot of resources that are free too.
Yes.
If you want to check it out. I know Ben would want me to mention that because he's so cheap. No, but yeah, you can check a lot of the free resources out, see if it's like your style, if it's something that you might enjoy, and then you can pay for some of the more advanced stuff or niche stuff if you want to.
You gave me a really good hook earlier when asking this question to you, because you said we are all educators here. And now that we're talking about education and learning, the question that came to my mind instantly was, to you guys as educators, except from learning and trying to get to grasp most of the concept you're reading about, what are the other characteristics of a good learner that you might suggest to someone to pick? Do you value sharing? Share what you're learning? Just try to maybe write a blog and just try to write about what you're learning. Maybe go contribute to open source communities while you're learning, or maybe just make a team with your friends, start making your projects. So as educators, what will your advice be to the people out there trying to learn Vue to, let's say, increase their potential as possible learners? And what picks will you give to them to say, hey, don't stop just reading it and just trying to run these examples, but also try to do this and this?
I like this. And this is probably the last question that we have time for, but I think it's a good one to end on. And I'm going to go first because I'm tired of Natalia and Ben stealing all my ideas.
I hope the question was clear. It was kind of confusing, but I hope.
I think it was clear to me. So I'll try to reiterate, I guess, just to make sure I'm understanding. You want to know what we'd recommend to learners for them to really get the most out of their learning.
Exactly. As educators, what will your picks be?
Yeah.
For people out there.
So I'm going to say one simple tip: build something you want to share with someone you care about.
That's nice.
That's it. When there's social context, you're so much more motivated.
Yeah.
My turn, Natalia. That
sounds really nice. You're always kind of putting pressure when you want to build something to show to someone you care.
Yeah.
I think that might be the first deadline for someone. Oh my God, I got to show them this.
And if it's related to your interests, like if you're trying to figure out tables and managing a database or something like that, build a Pokedex if you're into Pokemon, and then share it with your friend who's also into Pokemon. Exactly.
Just try to solve problems that you usually have daily. That will be I'm not an educator. That is my pick on that.
Yeah, those can be a little bit harder to find, but. So that's why I like to do that when it's possible, but I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I don't have that many problems. I feel like my life is pretty good.
So I actually wanted to say the same as Chris, obviously, but I can also add, if you have some questions, don't be afraid to ask. And don't hesitate to do so. We have a great community, really great. We have an awesome Discord channel. It's official Vue Discord channel. It's named Vueland. And there are many people there answering questions on a daily basis. It's a really nice place. So if you have any issues, any problems, any concerns about Vue, you can go there and ask. Same you can do on issues, on Vue forum, everywhere. Just don't be afraid to ask these questions. And if you have some concerns and you're sure something is working not as expected, don't be afraid to create an issue, because sometimes as a contributor I can see that good issue sometimes is better than actually pull request. So ask, create issues, and we will be happy with your contribution. Ben?
All right. Yep. So Chris definitely stole my thunder on that one too. But I would say I'm interesting. I'll see what Natalia and Chris have to say about this. But I would actually recommend that people don't contribute to open source right out the bat when you're starting with something. Open source, in my experience, has a lot of barriers as far as like sometimes it takes a long time for pull requests to get reviewed. And it can be very daunting from the perspective of like where to get started as far as like what libraries and stuff. So what I recommend people always is to Chris and Natalia's point, solve problems you care about. And eventually you might find that like there's a specific library you come to rely on that you use a lot. And then you start diving into the source code. And like that's when you start maybe thinking about contributing to open source. But I think starting with it swinging right out the bat is, I think, asking a lot of newer developers. But maybe Chris and Natalia think differently.
No, I agree. And also sharing something that you've built. Like if you're building an application and, there's some part of the application where you're thinking like, I could actually use this in a lot of applications, this code. If I just changed it a little bit, made it more modular, try doing that. Try extracting it out to a library that you can share with other people. And like one of the benefits of that is like when people use it, they'll help you improve it. So like it can become better than you could have ever made it by yourself. That's definitely true with like a lot of projects that I've worked on. Being able to benefit from the knowledge and experience of all the people who are using it helps you build a better thing. And then it makes you look super smart, even when you're just a normal person.
I think I discovered this aspect of, like, let's say the programming life later. Earlier on, I was like, let's say shy about showing my project to other people. But whenever I learned that people could help me and they could give me like their critical thinking on the project, they helped me so much. Like share your code and share your code earlier because it can help you grow.
Yeah, definitely. It can make you feel a little bit scared and vulnerable at first, but that's definitely great advice.
Yeah, it's also like a way to get used to people reading it, people judging your product, because it will be hard, when you're really deploying an application, you're really writing code. Like you got to start assuming your responsibilities earlier to, let's say, write something that is not only cool, but it is also like good. That can also be like quite a good exercise for you later on.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things that kept me from contributing to open source earlier is I was afraid that like people would find out like how many things I don't know, which is most things. I don't know most things still. And think I was just like, totally an idiot and unprofessional, and I shouldn't even be a developer.
I can't remember actually what's the name of that syndrome. It's like the imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
When you feel like, oh my God, I shouldn't be here. But you really should. Like, there is probably no moment in the life of a developer where you feel like you're really ready for something, I guess. Like, oh my God, I'm learning Node, I'm learning Angular. And once I will be done learning this, I will be ready to get the next job. It really never happens because you really learn it while you're working with like senior people, like better developer. And that's the moment you start really learning it.
And you learn how to solve more problems, like more different kinds of problems.
Exactly.
And I would actually jump in on that. It's not necessarily that people are better developers, but I think we have to like own to the fact that people specialize in different things,
Yeah.
And there are certain problems that people come with. So just something to keep in mind that not necessarily better, but just having more experience with certain problems.
Yeah, I've definitely had people like when I'm stuck on something who might just have 1 year of programming experience, a junior dev looking at code that I've been looking at all day. And it's like, well, why did you do this? And it's like, I did. Oh, huh, what? Why did I do that?
Yep, exactly.
It's like, oh, that's the bug. That's what's happening. But like my brain was just like skipping over it. I wasn't thinking about it as deeply as a beginner.
I've heard that's called an over-the-shoulder fix, when you just call someone like, hey, I can't solve this. And whenever you start explaining them what you cannot solve, it's done. You're like, you already solved it because you just need to explain it to someone.
Well, I can't take credit for solving it in that case. They definitely solved it. They saw something that didn't look right to them, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
So let's wrap up. We're going to move to some picks soon. But before we do that, I would love to know, Piero, where can people find you, like on the internet?
Okay, so actually I started, let's say, building my online presence, let's say 2 months ago. You can check out my Twitter. It's growing fast. I'm very happy for that. I'm posting like pics and tricks regularly, especially about JavaScript or Node.js. You can find my blog. It's called Decoder Swag. And you can find it's also the blog is growing fast. And especially the last articles for me were very meaningful. I will give you a pick later to one of the articles, not because it's mine, but because it's an article where many people contributed to it from all over the world. And that is like, for me, my personal little gem, so that people can really not only learn to be kind of grateful for what they have, but also to understand like people are going through the same struggle as me. That's very important for me, like as a developer, to know and to notice that people are going through the same problems, the same process that I'm going through. So you never feel stupid anymore. So you never feel inappropriate anymore.
That sounds great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that. And
thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being willing to go on this interesting journey with us, doing a different kind of episode.
Thank you so much. It was very interesting for me. And I won't deny you that I'm very curious about Vue.js right now. And I will start checking the information that you provided to me as soon as possible. And, it's also it was a very good occasion for me because you are all educators. So that doesn't happen every day. You have 3 educators here answering your questions. It's like,
that's true. And I guess one final thing that I want to tell people before we go into picks, when they talk about, should I, try to jump to this other framework? I'm going to say, if you're happy and productive with what you're using, you don't have to check out Vue. It's okay. If you sometimes feel like, could I be happier and more productive? If you have days like that, go ahead and check out Vue. But really, don't give it more than a day. If you're still not happy after a day of reading the docs, then you're probably not going to like it. So that's plenty of time. Just take a Saturday and go through it and try to see what you can learn. And keep an open mind. But yeah, if at the end of that you don't like it and you don't think it'll be useful for you, you can officially say that you've checked out Vue and you decided not to use it.
This episode is brought to you by Triplebyte. Applying to programming jobs sucks. You have to put the right keywords in your resume, you spend hours and hours on the phone screens and take-home projects, and that's assuming the company even responds to your application. Well, if you're a software engineer, Triplebyte can help. They work with over 400 top tech companies, from big names like Dropbox and Adobe to exciting startups. You do one brief online interview with them, and if you do well, you go straight to final interviews with the company on their platform. It's like the Common App for software developers. Triplebyte does not look at your resume or where you went to school. All they care about is if you can code. I've helped dozens of software developers with various credentials get jobs, and this looks like a terrific way for you to get in and get interviewed and get a job without a lot of the hassle and overhead. You can go check them out at triplebyte.com/view. That's triplebyte.com, byte as in 8 bits. As a special offer for listeners of this show, if you take a job through Triplebyte, they'll offer you a $1,000 signing bonus.
And now let's go to picks. So, do we have any volunteers to start with picks?
Yeah, it will be
Natalia?
probably me again. Yeah, I used to be first during this podcast. So my pick for this week is a great Netflix show. It's Love, Death, and Robots. It's awesome. I just gave it a try when flying back home from VueConf US. And apparently I've watched all the episodes, and it's really great. Just give it a try. Ben?
Yeah, so I have 2 picks for this week. One is Sarah Drasner wrote an article on CSS tricks called Form Validation in Under an Hour with Vuelidate. So be sure to check that out. And if you're looking for a book to read on learning principles and sort of revolutionizing what we understand as learners and teachers, check out the book Make It Stick. And yeah, those are my picks for this week.
Okay, actually I got 3 picks. And the first one is, I never really tried, but I discovered that I really love listening to music while coding. But you gotta listen to a specific kind of music. You just cannot listen to house music or disco music. At least that's for me, because it's just distracting. So you might check on the Neotic YouTube channel, or it's basically just a list of channels who make this lo-fi hip-hop music. And it's just really relaxing, and it really helps me coding.
How do you spell that? The Neotic YouTube channel?
Neotic.
Neotic.
Yeah, or you can check out, the other one is called Chill Cow.
Chill Cow.
Yeah.
I think I can spell that one. But how do you spell Neotic?
Neotic.
Okay, cool.
Another pick I have, it's a book. It's called Tools of Titans. I think it's very famous, especially in the US. It's from a guy who's called Tim Ferriss, and I think it really helps you give a discipline. Basically, it's just a collection of the best picks and advices and practices from famous people around the world. You can find Anthony Robbins, you can find famous swimmers, you can find actors, and they just give you their advices and what basically they do on their daily life to, let's say, keep their success going on and to improve themselves. I think that's really good. That's a really good book. You can just go through the pages. Every person just spends let's say 400 words for themselves. So very quick. You can just read it in the morning, and maybe you can say oh, I want to try this. And quickly, the third pick is the article I was talking to you earlier. It's called 10 Developers Share Their Stories from All Over the World. It's an article I have written with 10 people, 10 developers. They are from Nigeria, Indonesia, US, and from UK. And I think that's really good. Don't get me wrong. I've written it, but in there you will find their words. There's nothing like mine. I would really like to thank them if they're listening to this, and you will be able to hear from Fortune, who is in Nigeria. He's struggling to buy a laptop. You will hear from In, who is in Indonesia, trying to teaching moms how to code and how to live a better life to get them independent, And so I think you can really understand not only their struggle as developers, but as people.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much.
And I have 3 picks. The first one is The OA. A new season just came out on Netflix, season 2. The first season was really weird. It was really weird, but it was a trip. The second season is really weird. So if you liked how weird the first season was, check out season 2 of The OA. And that's my first pick. I don't want to say anything else about it because it's a spoiler.
Fair enough.
But my other 2 picks are Natalia and Ben. So first, we've mentioned that you're both educators. Natalia, where can people find the educational resources that you create?
So first, and probably the most obvious educator resource I have is VoVixen's workshops documentation. You can find them on vovixens.org website. And I also make articles, and I have a Dev2 account, so you can check it and see what I'm reading about.
Just search for Natalia Telpuhina, Dev2.
Yeah, I'm really obvious. I have all accounts with my name and surname, so it's really easy to find.
Well, except in our official Discord for Vue.
I really like to hide it.
Then you go by a different name.
Yes, but because it's a leftover from World of Warcraft years. So
Nice.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, Ben, what about you?
Yeah, so you can find some of my personal blog posts on bencodezen.io. But again, all my workshops that I teach are on my GitHub repo. So github.com/bencodezen. You can find everything there. And I have my DMs on Twitter open. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out.
Excellent. Thank you both. And yeah, we invited them to the podcast because they are such great educators of Vue. So yeah, I thank you so much, both of you, for being able to be here. And thank you so much, Piero, again, for this journey with us. I thought your interview questions were incredible. It was actually even better than I was hoping for.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for giving me the possibility to learn and to share my opinions.
I enjoyed learning from you as well.
Thank you so much.
So that's it for this week on Views on Vue. Until next week, enjoy the view.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.